back.
We're back.
Hello.
And we have a guest.
Today's a very special day. We're having a three-way.
That sounds so creepy.
But it's all in the family. Does that make it better or worse?
Worse, way worse.
Oh, yes, yeah. I thought so as soon as it came out of my mouth. So who do we have here today?
Today we've got Anthony Smith, my hubby.
Yeah. Sounds a bit weird when you say Anthony Smith.
I know, because you have a silent H in your name and it should be said Anthony.
Well,
Yeah,
you know.
That was always really confusing to me.
Yeah. It confuses everyone. Everyone in Australia is like, oh, you mean Anthony? He's like, no, Anthony.
Well, you know, I think my mum listens to this as well. So, you know, I'll tell you the same thing that I tell everybody else. And it sounds weird as somebody is like 44 years old, still telling people, you know, well, it was my mum that gave me the silent H. She didn't like the look of Anthony without the H, and she didn't like the sound of Anthony. She'll probably correct me on that when she does hear about it.
Well, big welcome to the C-Bomb. And we're going to start off with the same thing that we always do, which is a 1 out of 10. But today's edition is going to be like the Honeymooners Challenge. Have you heard of that?
No.
Okay, so basically how it works is that when, say, like the police pick up people for interrogations and they're trying to find out the truth of what's going on, they'll get both people into the room and they'll ask them a question and then they'll get them to answer at the same time. And obviously they haven't discussed what they're going to say.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Like it.
So I'm going to count to 3.
Yep.
And then you do your 1 to 10. And you just kind of like blurt it out and then we'll obviously go 1 at a time.
Wait. Is Anthony? Now I'm getting confused. Ant. Just call him my husband Ant. Is he
Something
answering
you should have worked out before you got on there, by the way.
the 1 to 10 of how he's feeling or the 1 to 10 of how he thinks I'm feeling for the week?
Oh, how he thinks you're feeling.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So-
That makes more sense.
And 10's my baseline. So
Otherwise you'd
10's
just be like-
normal me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 10's
And,
no cancer
and
me.
just recapping, I think last week was a 6, if
Last
I
week
remember
was
rightly.
a 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, so definitely what Christine's feeling, not yourself. Otherwise, you just feel like screaming out your own name, which seems like maybe it might be useful for everyone.
And it'd be really weird if I was saying like 12 and you were like 7.
Yeah, the scale is 1 to 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even
Good.
more weird then.
All right.
No painting outside the lines for now. All right? And I go, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then go.
Okay.
And when I say go, then you go.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, go.
9. Oh, good.
I was considering a
close.
7 there for a moment,
Oh.
and I just went like 8 was my last second decision.
Yeah. I reckon this last week until today, I was a solid 9, I reckon.
Yeah.
It was a mega improvement from the week before.
Why until today? What happened today?
Today was chemo round number 5. So, getting a few more side effects, which I've downed some, an array of medication to kind of keep under wraps. But before today, this week was a really good week thanks to Felicia's Magic Mouthwash, which is a special compounded concoction. And if anyone's interested and needs it, happy to supply it. So just give me a shout. Well, I can't supply it. You'll need to get it compounded by a chemist. But that stuff, whoa, like the ulcers that we were talking about the week before that were making me so cranky, that just cleared right up. And when you've been really sick and then you go to not sick, you just feel like $1 million. So this week has been a pretty good week, actually.
Wow. So the ulcers have kind of cleared up.
Cleared up. I'm gargling 4 times a day to keep them at bay. But it's good. It's great.
All right. Well, it's quite surprising actually because I think there were, after there was this moment, the last session that we had, I was with you at the chemotherapy session and we were obviously on site, which was quite fun, and the noise in the background and things, and had you clipped up to the lapel mic, right? And the one that actually Anthony's wearing right now, and when we pulled it off, because you go, oh no, my hair's great, it's just like, nothing's happening to my hair, but when I took the clip off you, there was like a big clump of hair in the clip that obviously got caught, and I was like, whoa, that looks like a bit more hair than
Yeah, so even though I've been physically feeling good this week, actually I jinxed myself again. And last week you said, da 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 da, and I was like, yeah, I'm feeling good. Hair's staying put. I'm past number 4 and it's good. Yeah, the hair has been coming out in clumps. Not that you could tell. My illustrious long hair looks okay right now, but it's literally, I think, like a veneer. This is like the facade of the front of the house, because I reckon I've lost at least a third of my hair this week.
Wow.
Chunks, clumps of it everywhere.
And still a 9.
Still a 9, yeah. But I think because I kind of expected my hair loss, and it doesn't actually make you feel bad physically. Does that make sense? So like mentally, I'm a bit like, well, this is sad, but I was feeling so much better physically because I was so miserable not being able to eat and talk properly and stuff that actually I've been but kind of moving on.
So the hair's like a little bit like an aging rocker where, like don't point the fan at me because when the hair blows up, there's not much underneath.
Yeah, I suspect so. I suspect if we flipped over, there'd be quite a bit. It'd be a very sparse. You
got the whole 90s undercut going.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit more about how the hair's actually coming out though.
Yeah. Interestingly, I kind of had in my head that when I started losing my hair, I'd have like these chunks, like gaps of hair that would just fall out and it'd be really noticeable. But actually it's like, if you've ever gone into the shower and you wash your hair and then there's just some hair that comes out, it's like that, but a huge amount of hair. So every time I, rake my fingers through or I have to give my hair a little brush, which I try not to do very much, it's like a mega hairball. And you'll find, I'll sort of like hold my hair up, and I just did a clear out before we came on so you won't see it too much, but there's always bits that are just hanging down out of my hair now, so I can just kind of grab a little bit and pull a whole chunk out. So yeah, it's probably driving Aunt and Mum nuts because it's all over Mum's house and all over our house.
Yeah. I think your mum more so, hence her little bit of a subtle advice earlier on today that maybe you could start wearing your head covers.
Oh, she's like, maybe you should just start wearing a turban now. I was like, why? I haven't lost my hair. She's like, just to catch the hair before it falls out.
There was a cleanup activity after you left the house yesterday. She's like, we have my Dyson stick, and she's like, this thing is just not powerful enough. And then she like went and got the plug-in one to get all the hair. It's
intense. And I mean, I'm also still not at the point where I've decided what to do with it. Like I've gone back and forth on that all week because I'm like, is now the time where I just like chop it short? Do I go to the hairdresser? Do I get Ant to do it? Do I just, or will my hair be okay? Is it just like every day I'm like, it'll be fine. Maybe this is the last little bit and no more's going to come out.
Forever the optimist. It's slowing down, using some Rogaine or something. So just to be clear though, it's breaking, right? It's not falling off at the root.
Yeah, when I pull it out, it doesn't seem to have roots attached. It's just like, hair, like straight bits of hair with no root.
So are you doing anything with the hair? The hair that's fallen out?
I'm collecting it in the garbage bin in our ensuite. So if you have a look in there, it's like a deep pit of hair to spare.
Only because I heard that if you have hair that has fallen out, like not just if you're undergoing chemo, but just every day, you can put it on the windowsill and birds will take it to line their nests, which I thought was a really creepy but nice thing. Oh. So if you just left your hair outside on the thing, they could build a couple of nests for birds and they'd just be sitting there in this like mink, just like chinchilla.
Well, I mean, it's kind of nice.
Ant's not loving this idea.
No. I'm just trying to picture where we'd even put my hair.
I've now got visions of lots of homeless birds coming and getting all of Christine's hair. It might actually help stop the magpies pecking at the goal net.
Okay. Well, maybe we can take my hairball out and just put it near the goal outside.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Won't freak the kids out at all.
You'd be like, Mummy, I saw a bird that looks exactly like you. He's got like the haircut and everything. And just a little like China doll haircut with the black hair.
So good.
Which brings us on to the amazing wigs that your mum got out when we were
Yeah. Never trust a grandma who tells you she's got a great looking wig. It's kind of spunky.
That's what I said. As soon as you hear the word spunky, it's all over, right? And I'm like, spunky equals like Liza Minnelli.
Oh, it over delivered on Liza Minnelli. It went to John Bon Jovi.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And then you had your hair and it like had the whole business up front, party down back, mullet going on. It was pretty good. But obviously you have access to the wig library. So
I do.
Now you can be less of a tourist, more,
A proper borrower, a user of the library.
Accepted to the club. I mean, not to dwell too much on the whole hair thing, but like, and how do you feel about the hair situation? Because it's probably the first thing, the physical element that you'll see, and it'll kind of reaffirm that Christine's actually going through the situation, and it makes things quite real. Like, how do you actually? Do you think about it at all, or like?
Well, weirdly, that's why I kind of adjusted mine. Well, that's why I put an 8 there rather than a 9, because I know how like the hair situation was part of the conversations very early on, and I suppose hair was slightly less of a problem than losing your eyebrows and eyelashes. But I felt like that sort of very real physical in your face sort of element of sickness was probably going to be something that would be a moment of realization. It's been very strange as a passenger on this journey, because in many respects Christine carries on like she always has done. And so up to this point we still haven't had this kind of sudden shock realization of, okay, Christine's like can't get out of bed today, she's feeling terrible. So it's really strange. But the hair's starting to come out. It's still not there for me yet.
When you say
really
not there,
like it's still there's no kind of I've been waiting for a shock moment. Yeah, it's like I suppose if I think to, and this is on subject now because Elisa's getting married today, but I remember the whole build up to getting married, and we're going to be husband and wife and everything that comes with that, and you kind of like, you're expecting this big change, and then you get married, and then the next day you wake up and it's like, well, this is kind of like we've woke up for many days, for many years before. Yeah. It doesn't feel massively different. And I suppose that's kind of the closest thing I can use to describe this situation. Good,
actually, it's kind of like when you ask your kid, they have their birthday, and you're like, how does it feel to be 6 or 5 or whatever? And it's like, it feels the same. I'm just a day older because I was, a year younger yesterday, because it's happening so gradually, I suppose. But be honest though, are there times where you look at Christine and just like for a blink second, for a split second rather, she's bald, like completely plucked chicken. And you have to kind of imagine it because you're kind of like you're training your brain not to be shocked when it actually does happen.
Honestly, there's been a couple of times when I have looked at her and I'm like, I'm trying to picture her bald, and it's just not, it's really difficult.
We'll get the bold filters out later, and just I think it's like a bit of an exposure therapy, right? Otherwise, you'll be sleeping soundly one night and you have this dream where the bowling balls come up and each of the bowling balls are actually Christine's head and they're rolling towards you in the return. It's not going to be good, right?
I've not had dreams for quite a long time. I think it comes from having young children. So
that sounds so sad.
I know.
I have no dreams.
I used to have
dreams go to
I gave up all my dreams.
I used to have such great dreams, so many dreams, and I have very few dreams these days while I'm asleep.
Well, please don't start with the whole bowling ball head.
Yeah.
Because that would
probably
be a disaster. I somehow incepted that into your mind.
I'll come back to you the moment I have a really disconcerting kind of dream or nightmare.
So just kind of digging into it though, and would you say, you mentioned that Christine's, is living just like how she has always lived. Would you kind of, is that really kind of true? I know she's doing really well with it, but has anything changed in your mind, or is it actually nothing?
Look, kind of these things are happening, and I think it was with the ulcers and things last week, and the days that she is quite tired, she will have like an afternoon nap if she can get that in and stuff. So there are those things, and very conscious in the back of my mind, like through the day, how can I do a little bit more to give her a little less to physically do. I mean, I'm still no good at the admin stuff. There's not much I can do to help the day-to-day admin stuff. But there's a lot of other stuff that I can do. So I just try and kind of take that load away.
And I guess a big part of it is the processing and accepting it's happened, right? Do you think about it much day to day, or is it kind of like there's a fight ahead of us? We'll dwell on those things and reflect after the fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it all the time, every day. It's always in the back of your mind, in spite of everything else that you're going through in that day and need to do. And I kind of keep trying to mentally prepare myself for the times where it could get much, much harder for Christine. And this whole experience, I'm the soft and emotional one in this relationship, and right at the beginning of this I was like, no, I've got to not be emotional, and I've got to be like as strong as I can be for her and give her that as much of my strength as I can through it, and not be the usual emotional wreck that I am at any kind of serious thing that goes on in life, as you well know.
He's a crier.
Thankfully, not too much of an ugly crier. I mean, I've seen way worse. I have seen way worse.
Well, that's why we've got the cameras on today.
Yeah.
The producer always knows. Yeah, I do. I think I reflect a little bit too that it's probably being a support person, especially being a husband as well. It's probably a bit of a fine line between the amount of kind of support that you give, like by suppressing your own feelings on the matter, or just maybe pushing it down the road to prioritize Christine, but also balancing that with your own well-being and trying to kind of understand how to process it, how to take it, because everything in the course of medical treatments is a milestone, right? And you're just looking at that next thing, and we've got to get through the chemo, that's 12 weeks. Then we've got to get through this, we've got to get through that, there's recovery, there might be mastectomy, whatever it is. And I think that you always you're at risk of treating it like a bit of a project sometimes, of how do we get through the next thing, and then we'll review. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, kind of thing. And I do wonder sometimes whether it has to be seen much more as life in general rather than just trying to get through the next thing. That's the question that I have in my mind. I mean, is that how you're managing it at the moment, Christine? Like, are you thinking of it as like this is just like a project to run through?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it just seems like a thing that we have to do, so like every week is sort of delineated for me by the milestone of the Friday for the chemotherapy. And then there's stuff that just falls in around it, and it just becomes part of my weekly, I guess, routine. So on Thursday, I know that I need to go and get my bloods done before I go for chemo. So, I've slotted that into my diary. And then I know that on Saturdays and Sundays, I'm probably going to be a bit more tired. So if I can flex to have an afternoon nap on Saturday and Sunday, I'll try and do that while I've got the weekend. And then I gear up for Monday. Monday's going to be like the really emotional day. Like, that's the hormonal day where it's like I'm tired and I've gone back to work, and there's a bit going on emotionally. So there does start to become just a regular kind of pattern, almost like with what the kids have got on. Like on Mondays I've got soccer training. So it just becomes a bit of a milestone, tick along, got to keep going, basically, part of life.
Yeah, part of life. I guess while we're in this space, right, and this kind of tone, I have been thinking a bit about the whole thing about life, right? And and trying to make sense of it, because I guess when you grow up as a child, whether you find religion or whatever it is, you do have an innate sense of like order, or perhaps maybe justice, karma, things like that in the world, right? And I think that when these kind of things happen, it's really an affront to that, because it reinforces that like life is actually much more random than that. You know, there's actually not a reason why these things happen. And when you start to kind of realize that, it does kind of challenge you, I feel. Whether you are religious or you feel that what you give out in the world you get back, or whatever it is, right? And that can make you feel very out of control. And I know that for me, like I'm much more of an existentialist, I guess, that I don't believe that there is meaning, you know, there's no meaning in life other than the meaning that you prescribe to it. And I think these kind of events really reinforce that for me, that it's just literally down to a cell reproducing in a way that it's not quite meant to. It couldn't be more random in like the cosmic scale of things, right? This is just a microscopic piece of DNA matter that's like decided that it's going to reproduce, right? And I wonder, has it changed anything for you in terms of like the chaos and the order of life?
No, I think that would be, if I claimed that would be overstating it, because actually it hasn't really readjusted my view, because I don't think I've really gone through a period of why me, you know, and I think if I had started going down that spiral at the beginning, I would be in a very different place, and potentially I would be asking a lot more questions or finding myself in a different place. But actually, because I've been so lucky to be surrounded by people who have helped move things along so quickly, it feels like this is, you know, it's totally manageable, and it's just a thing that's happening, and it could be anything that could be happening. And so I'm just kind of dealing with it. Does that make sense? Yeah. But it is interesting actually, because definitely when I was a kid, I mean, we were raised religiously, right, in the church, and mum and dad still are active in the church, as are a lot of our relatives, you know, and I definitely took comfort in knowing that, you know, I had religion in my life when I was younger. And it's interesting now to see, because, you know, Max and Jackson go to scripture, so they're learning about God now. It's interesting to kind of hear the things that they are now asking and that they're processing as well, and how they're reacting to things. So, you know, Jackson this week asked me if I loved him and God the same.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting, right? Because, you know, like that he'd even kind of thought about it, but it's obviously something that they're learning about in scripture. And I had to say to him, well, I love you more. And I said, and God will understand me saying that to you, because he will know what's in my heart, right? And so I don't want to lie about it. And the truth is, I love you more, you know?
Yeah.
And he said, I love you and God both the same. And I was like, oh.
And try to do a nice thing.
Okay, yeah. All right, the scripture's really working.
This whole indoctrination thing is going really well. Well, at least, I mean, it could have been worse. It could have been like, well, I am God now because you love me more. So, you know, and that actually, when I think about how you treat me, that makes sense.
I'd just like to point out that Jackson never asks me deep and meaningful questions. I don't know why that is.
He comes to you for the soccer coaching.
Yeah. I know exactly why that is, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, there's a classic catch-22 questions with the whole religion thing. It's like that whole, could God microwave a burrito so hot that he himself could not hold the burrito? You know, it's like, You're stuck in a loop. What do you do? Have to pray about it.
We've been having a lot of fun this week actually with Would You Rathers. So the kids love a good Would You Rather. Like, as we were talking about, I gave them the dinosaur. Oh no, it was a horse, wasn't it? Well, I made it a dinosaur. I was like, would you rather fight a dinosaur-sized chicken or 100 chicken-sized dinosaurs? So we went through a bunch of Would You Rathers this week, which were pretty good.
Jackson's not quite grasped it.
No, he was like, would you rather be in a swimming pool full of 1,000 bugs or get $1? And we're like, we'll take the $1, Jackson.
Damn inflation. Is it on the subject of the kids? Are they asking any more questions? Are they processing it?
Well, yeah.
I know what you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, the school visit.
The school visit. Yeah. So,
Yes.
I mean, they're not really asking us more questions, but they're clearly processing it in different ways. It was education week, so we had open classrooms this week. So, and I ran in the last 5 minutes to get into Max's classroom to look at his work and stuff. And his teacher was like, oh, where's Max? We're like, we were supposed to bring our child with us. He's still in after school. Okay, anyway, let's just look at his stuff. And his lovely teacher mentioned to us, and we'll tell you about Europe in a second, but she said, I had originally marked Max as absent for this week because you guys were supposed to be away in Europe. And I said that to him in class. I said, oh, Max, you're actually here. You're not in England. And he apparently announced loudly to the class, that's because my mum has got cancer.
He dropped the C-bomb.
He dropped the C-bomb. And I was like, oh, did anyone say anything? She was like, no, the kids just all kind of went, oh, they just kind of nodded along with it and, didn't ask too much. But he's clearly processing it right. And, he's okay, I guess, with kind of putting it out there in the world. But she did say she had noticed that he was a little bit more distracted in class.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then when we kind of thought about it, we were like, actually, he's been a little bit more emotional. Crying a little bit more easily.
Yeah.
About things in the last couple of months. So yeah, maybe there is a bit of a impact that's kind of happening.
Yeah, little ripples.
And probably that he doesn't even really know himself, right? So subconsciously and yeah.
Yeah, I think we often think kids are just so anti-fragile and resilient, right? But it pops out in really weird ways. And I know especially with Neve, my daughter, she processes things through telling back stories sometimes. Like you'll think something hasn't affected her or news, and then she'll tell a story that pretty much like outlines her emotions. And it's really incredible how it just pops out. If you're just there to listen and notice things, it'll be there. They'll tell you in their own time. You can't really ask them. It's like, every parent's had that experience, but I feel like I've really had it where you ask like, how was school? What did you do? It's like, I don't remember, nothing.
Yeah, I don't remember.
We bring them over here for family dinner, and she's just spewing it, all the beans all over the table, like what she did in my new show. And I was like, I asked you this, you didn't. Like, no, I want to tell you when I want to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Can't force them. Can't hurry them along.
Yeah. So I guess I do want to talk a little bit about some more medical elements as well, because I know that we spoke a little bit, we gave a bit of a prelude that you're going to have a choice around a mastectomy at some point and what that would mean and things like that. Do you think that you're ready to talk a little bit about that? Or
Yeah, for sure. So when I first was diagnosed, I was definitely in the camp of let's just get rid of these babies. Let's get them off and start again and we'll be A-okay. And I think Ant was in that camp too. I think you were quite excited about sort of some new girls on the block.
What? How gave you that impression? I thought I'd, played that really low.
I'm just now imagining Ant holding the two different sized bags in his hands, like in each hand, trying to weigh them up. Going, it's like picking out TV.
I'm feeling a ding.
You always go bigger than what you think at the showroom.
Well, I actually had one of the guys that I know was like, "Oh, so you're gonna go boob shopping?" And I'm like, I've just announced to you what's going on. It's like, this isn't the thing that's at the forefront of my mind right now.
But it's not directly at the back either.
Yes, exactly.
Well, like picturing Christine with no hair, you know, I might also have pictured Christine with some new babies every now and again. You know?
Yeah, it sounds bad. It's very wholesome because you're married, I suppose. So.
Yeah.
And actually, even right up front, I was kind of like, can we not just go straight to that? Like, rather than going through all this other stuff that we have to go through, can I just get rid of them, basically? And for a number of reasons, you can't, because if you essentially go to have a double mastectomy, it's major surgery, and there's a really big, healing process that goes along with that. So if they then discovered that your cancer had spread and was fairly invasive, you would need to undergo chemotherapy, and your body just would not be able to heal from that process as well as having the chemo, right? So there's a reason why everything kind of goes in the sequence that it sort of runs in. But essentially now I'm at the point where I could still make that decision if I wanted to, and have a mastectomy, but I will need to make that decision before I commence radiotherapy. So if you guys remember when we, outlined what was happening in my treatment plan, I essentially have chemo. I have a 4-week break from chemo, and then I start a 3-week course of radiotherapy, which is particular to the site, and that's every day for 3 weeks. But it essentially, if I do that, it destabilizes the area, and so it makes reconstruction very difficult. And I also don't need to have radiotherapy on the site if I get rid of all the breast tissue, essentially. So where we're at the moment is that I need to make that decision before I go, into having radiotherapy, one way or the other. But there's quite a lot to think about in the grand scheme of it. So I think people kind of think boob jobs are a dime a dozen because, everyone seems to have had a breast augmentation or, cosmetic breast surgery. But from my very, very limited understanding, and I'm sure there's lots more that I will discover as I sort of go to make this decision and sort of work through it. If you're having cosmetic surgery, it's not a matter of removing everything that's there and then popping in implants, right? Whereas for a mastectomy, you're getting rid of everything and then you're popping in implants. And implants are, for me, I'm a naturally slimmer person, so I don't have enough bits on my body that can then reconstruct my boobs. So I will have to put implants in if I want to have breasts ongoing, which I do. I have a lot of summer holidaying left in me, so I do want to still have boobs. And so that's a big deal because you're putting something that's foreign into your body. It's not all without complications. You have to potentially adjust for, this thing called rippling where you can see kind of, the dimples that run across the bag of which your implant is. And it's particularly noticeable, I think, or it can be more prevalent in slimmer people.
Yeah.
So to cover that up, they've got to take a bit of fat from other parts of your body and inject that across the top. And, your implants can move around, and so you might need to go back under to reorientate them and put them in the right position. And, there's just, it's a fair bit of stuff that goes with it.
Yeah. It's never as simple as it sounds.
No.
All right. So you're going to make that decision
in the next few weeks, I think. Yeah. So next week I'm meeting with my surgeon again, and I'm also meeting the radio oncologist who will be treating me if I go forward with that. Yeah. So, but hopefully between those two consultations, I'll be able to get a lot more information, and then have a bit more of a playing field for making decisions around that.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
It's funny what you're saying about that week by week and it all being part of a process, right? If we had looked at this as the whole journey in one go and kind of discussed the whole thing right up front, you can't really do that. With each week, there's a new piece of information, and that's why it feels this sense of it being a project. It's like, you deliver something knowing you've got this as a target in the end, but as you go, you need to continue to pivot and change the direction. The information that comes in inevitably changes your perspective on the outcome at the end as well. So, you know, you can very easily relate it to any kind of delivering any kind of project.
Yeah.
Really.
With trade-offs as new information comes out, that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I think that people come bring their personality into it, and I think the fact that you know, Christine, you were very much like, get rid of them, let's just go. I think that just says more about how you're trying to approach it and how you're trying to deal with things, right? Rather than probably the thought out and response to everything.
Yeah, and look, in fairness, that's pretty much my approach to almost all of it, right? I've been very trusting because I have real faith in the team that's around me who've been giving me advice, but to the point where I haven't looked anything up, like we talked about Dr. Google, right? I have made a real conscious effort not to jump onto Google for pretty much anything. I can do it now if I wanted to, because I'm really clear on what the path that I'm taking is. So if I'm going on now, I'm looking for specific bits of information. But when I was diagnosed up front, for the first, 5 weeks or 6 weeks as we were going through all that stuff, I just refused to go on. Every time I had a question about something, I would go specifically to Felicia, poor Felicia, because I didn't want to know all of the other stuff and all of the potential complications, all of the mini percentage, chances or risks and things like that. So that is very much in line with my personality. I'm just not I'm kind of more give me the big picture and kind of get me to the end point than needing to know all of the tiny bits that kind of contribute to that big picture. And actually kind of frustrates me when I have to go through all of the little bits, or I feel like I'm spinning wheels, which is what happened when I had to go back in for the sentinel node biopsy, the second surgery.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to kind of just turn to you a little bit, and we thought we'd have you on obviously halfway and then closer to the end of the chemo treatment as things progressed and potentially more symptoms and things like that. But I guess we've been asking Christine this question at every session, I know because you've been listening, about looking at how she's handled the last week. I'm going to give you the whole chunk, and you can go back as far as finding out the news. But do you have any reflections on how you've gone through that time, and any advice to yourself, I suppose, finding out the news, being there to support Christine, maybe even processing it yourself? What would you kind of say to the aunt that just found out?
Yeah, it was it's an interesting one. I think Christine's probably covered it to a degree in earlier conversations, but when we first found out, and Christine told me on the phone as she left the place, and she'd already said, I'd left the city. I thought it was all just a standard process from here on for her to get the all clear and stuff. So then when she phoned me and she told me kind of, probably to the same degree of what she would have experienced when they told her, just like my heart sunk, and, I became kind of incredibly emotional at that time, because something like that happens and you immediately catastrophize, and the worst things are the ones that spring to your mind, and you start to wonder if your life will continue without that person. And that for me was like a really, really scary time, because let's face it, Christine keeps this house running, and she's like the pillar of this family, but more importantly, she's been my absolute best friend for many, many years. So my advice would be to myself that in that moment, in those few days where there was these questions, my advice would be to, you know, calm down, like, you know, everything is going to be okay, much like she was told by Felicia, you know, you're going to go through whatever you're going to go through, but you'll be fine at the end. And anything that would take away those like first few days of real kind of like scary thoughts.
Yeah.
That would be my advice to myself.
Wow, how's that sound?
I know, I have to say, actually, in the first week, I think I was more worried about Ant than I was about me. Like, I was going through a lot, but I also was like, Ant's such an optimistic guy and he's always really upbeat. And so I was just like, are you okay? Like, I just kept asking him, like, it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. Like, it's okay to go and talk to someone else or go and see, you know, like, you don't have to be super strong for me. Like, there's going to be times when this is going to be overwhelming, or you're going to be pissed off if I get really sick and you have to do all of the heavy lifting around the house to get everything done. And you're not going to be able to feel like you can complain to me because I'm sick, but it's still annoying, and you're okay. It's okay to feel that way, you know. So I was kind of constantly checking in on you, wasn't I, for the first few weeks? Like, yeah. And our friends have been pretty good as well, because they've all sort of, you know, been the same, sort of reaching out and like, but are you all right? Do you need anything? You've got to take time for yourself as well. So,
yeah, because there's so much like give and take in a relationship, right? So there are times when, you know, you're not feeling 100%, so the other person has to feel, you know, pick up the slack and do all those kind of things, right? And I guess that might be a bit more difficult going through this, right? Maybe, and you feel like you might not be able to do that as much, and maybe there's, I don't know, maybe there's a strategy where you can make a space for it, but yeah, it's a tricky one. Yeah.
I think the fact that there's been so many supportive people around, and actually just the knowledge that if things become too tough or like really tough, that there's avenues to like, you know, go and alleviate some of that or get away. There's plenty of people that are offering that little bit of support to help us with the kids or whatever else. So it's one less thing to go and run to. All of that has been so helpful through the whole process, because at no stage have I actually had to worry ahead of me on how are we going to get through this next stage and phase, because I feel that we're very lucky in having the people around us that, like, there are so many potential people that would be there at the drop of a hat to help through. So that in itself takes away a lot of the mental strain of what if.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can be more just in the present, here and now, working through stuff and not get burdened by those future thoughts of not being able to cope.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Okay, so I think we'll kind of leave it there, and again, and thank you for coming on, and we'll kind of have you back towards the end of the chemo session. But Christine, any kind of call outs or shout outs for this week?
Yeah, this week is a bit of a shout out to Sam and Aletha, actually, who are going to be getting married in, what's the time now? Probably like half an hour maybe. So we were supposed to be in Europe celebrating the amazing nuptials of Ant's youngest sister, Elisa, to the very dashing Samuel. So we're absolutely devastated, obviously, not to be there with them and with the whole family celebrating that. But we will be live streaming that in just, you know, really shortly. But this is just an appreciation post for the love and the care and the support that not just Elisa and Sam, but the whole family have really shown. You know, it could be really easy to be super disappointed, you know, that we're going to be that part of the family that just can't make it. And, you know, Mila had a starring role as being one of the flower girls and everything. Yeah. And, you know, so we're doubly upset to kind of not be there. but yeah, it could be just one of those very easy things where just one little slip, you could be like, oh, I'm really disappointed that you couldn't kind of come over. And it has not been that at all. Like from the minute that we've had to share this news, you know, our family has been so super supportive and just so understanding about absolutely everything, and then made a huge effort to kind of keep us involved and up to date and, you know, part of the whole thing, even though we're so far away. So hugely grateful for that, and we'll definitely have to make it up and celebrate next year sometime when we're through all of this.
Yeah, I think Mila has at least a couple more years of flower girl cuteness in her, right? Surely.
Well,
I don't know if there's anyone else left to get married.
Yeah, I know. We need to find someone who needs to get married. She's got, peak cuteness. Maybe a year left.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway. So Sam and Lisa, we love you loads, and we hope you have the most amazing day ever.
Absolutely. I don't need to add anything to that.
And can't, because you'll start crying not being there.
Yes.
We've already had a few tears today.
Yes. Yeah. I was a little bit teary this morning as Elisa was reading off the letter or the
letters that we sent over. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Till next week.
See you then.
Thank you. It's been fun.